Hello, everybody. Welcome. I guess this is the first Quantum Zen Online Zoom Dharma talk. I remember doing a couple of talks before, but that was being streamed on YouTube. We had like a couple of those. So we're trying to get back having regular Dharma talks, hopefully monthly. We'll see how it goes, but at least we'll start today with these Zoom talks. And the usual format will be we'll have an introductory talk, and then I will be answering questions. So, yeah, thank you for being here. And also, if you're watching this recording, because a lot of people actually signed up for this, I hope you enjoy this. So, our speaker today will be Colin. I see you. There you are. Colin, do you want to unmute?
Hey, Jason.
We're going to do a little bit of different styles. I'm going to introduce the both of us. So I know a little bit about you, but maybe before you begin, tell us perhaps where you are living, when you started practicing in the Quantum School of Zen, maybe what
Mhm.
Zen Center. Obviously, you're affiliated with the online Sangha. What Zen Center you're connected with, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Colin Thurmond. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I had been a longtime practitioner actually since I was a young boy in a number of different traditions, in Tibetan schools, in Vipassana traditions, but I entered the Quantum School and sort of found a home Sangha here in 2020 during the pandemic when everything was shut down and we needed to go remote. So as the online offerings were there, I ended up running across, just by pure luck of the algorithm, Jeff Kitz's and Master Bon Song's videos, and was sort of immediately struck by them and decided to show up to an evening meditation from the Empty Gate Zen Center, and have been sticking around ever since.
Yes, you have. And how many precepts have you taken? You've taken
I've
five,
done
right?
10
Oh, you
precepts.
did. You have done. Okay, so you are a Dharma teacher in training. Cool.
Indeed, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Colin. Some of you may know me. My name is Jason. I'm a teacher for the Quantum Zen Online Sangha. I'm also a teacher for the Empty Gate Zen Center in Berkeley. Um, I started practicing in 1997 and had a long journey to get here. I currently live in Santa Clara, California, which is near San Jose, about an hour away from San Francisco. So this is why I'm very active in the online Sangha. So I do appreciate having this format. And Colin will give an introductory talk. And then afterwards, if you have any questions, and it could be about anything too. It can be about Colin's talk. It can be about your practice. It can be about Quantum School of Zen, the online Sangha, forms, life. Any kind of question is possible. So you can hold it. Hopefully you'll have some. Colin, let me pin you. I was gave instructions to do this, and you're gonna have to do this to me later, so the recording will come out, I guess, good. I'm gonna pin your video, and you can begin.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Maybe before I get started, a couple of questions. Are most people here, have you been affiliated with the Quantum School, or is this kind of your first foray, that you're kind of first Dharma talk with the Zen tradition or the Quantum tradition at all, or is everybody here kind of old stalwarts to the practice? So I definitely recognize some of the faces from the online offerings, but all right. With that, I'll sort of not assume that anybody's just kind of brand new to the tradition, so I won't take any time to kind of go step back and do any definitional work, that kind of thing. But Jason asked me a little while ago to do this Dharma talk, and I asked him if there was anything specific that he wanted me to focus on. And he just said, "Well, if you have a life, you have a Dharma talk." So, I told him there, all right, be careful what you wish for here. But he's here to sort of knock me back into shape, so to speak, if I go off the rails. But one of the things that has really, I'll just speak a little bit about what's been on my mind and my heart as I've been going about this particular practice, and as it's become, very much a daily practice for me, and something that is a major part of my life. I'll kind of give you a brief sense of where, I don't know, just kind of where it's leading me these days. About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, one of my best friends in the world who lives out in California was in visiting in Austin and visiting with me. And we went out to dinner together, and we were just kind of grabbing tacos down the street. And he asked me sort of, how's the practice going? Like, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep investing your time and energy after all these years into it? And my first thought, of course, was, okay, well, it's to end the suffering of others, to help people. And it was like some talk about our direction, but like at that moment when he asked me that question, it felt like a really canned response, if I'm honest with you. It was like the right quantum answer in that moment. It was like, I got A+ on the exam. Jason won't hit me with his stick with that answer. All right, I got out of that one. But probably because it was a really close friend, probably because of somebody that I have a level that I just have such safety with him, and I can just be so utterly honest. The question really hit differently. And so, to be honest with you, there was a real incompleteness to that answer between like what I should give and what was kind of most earnest for me in that moment. And without a doubt, like the Bodhisattva vow and that kind of thing is a real deep orientation. It's something that I feel really close to. But I think talking to my friend that afternoon, it really missed an important component. It felt incomplete. And really the truthful answer is that I want to live a life that feels alive. And I want to live a life that kind of, just to use a colloquial phrase, feels plugged in, feels in tune, kind of in rhythm, in step with life and how it's moving. And I think that kind of aliveness is one of the things that this practice gives to me and helps me reconnect with in a really meaningful way. And I mean, that aliveness, not in the sort of sense of like some kind of heightened spiritual or mystical experience, but like a really quotidian one. Like moment to moment, like what's my lived experience like in my body, in daily life, when I'm interacting with just the world around me as it is. And I think I've started to cull together this list of what I'm calling for myself giant koans. Like we have our koan practice, and Jason gives me number 264 out of the book, and I normally whiff on it, and I have to go walk out of the room with my tail between my legs. All right, it's a normal practice. Great doubt. But there's some really giant koans for me. Certainly the what am I and what is this are big giant koans. I think that there's just no end to those questions. They're really infinite. But some of the most important koans are ones that like I make for myself. Those are my most important koans. And so my giant koan now really is like, how do I live a really vital life that's really embodied and plugged into experience? And then how do I use that kind of life to help other people? And so if that doesn't require some kind of moment by moment answer, like I don't know what does. And I think the really important part of that answer lies in that experience of vitality. And so I actually sort of noticed this shift. Because I'm somebody who has moved across a number of traditions over time, and I've sort of seen, I read a lot of literature. I've sort of surveyed the space. I went to school for history, so like it's just a part of my DNA to kind of like do deep research in these kind of things. I've really noticed a certain shift among different teachers in this school and external schools. And perhaps it's because I seek it out, because it's my own propensity and direction. But this reframing of enlightenment as enlivenment, and this idea of defining it as aliveness or a sense of connectedness or sort of zest and curiosity for life. And I think what that means is a little bit of this open receptivity to all of it. And when I read Sung San's text, I hear him talk a lot about become one with. And I think that's such a mysterious phrase to try to unpack for yourself experientially. In one sense, he's talking about this, this sort of the subject-object duality and trying to pierce through that. But that's like already it's a very theoretical and heady talk that we're getting into the minute I go down that level of discourse with you. But how does the elimination of that duality feel in the moment to moment experience? How is it lived in sort of the heart, body, mind, so to speak? And so I think some of it for me comes with like, it's not that become one with the vitality is not always about curating for pleasure. I think that curation really is antithetical to the project itself. And so I really had to ask myself this question: have I misunderstood the goal of equanimity in practice? And I think at times, like I've missed the mark in understanding what that really means. And in equanimity, not as, I mean, here's the misunderstanding, but some sort of flattening of the peaks and valleys of experience. But I think equanimity is really pointing to something more around like allowing the just thisness, if I can nounify that thing, like keep that coming while remaining, like keeping our center and allowing it to occur and having sort of the capacity and resilience to transform that into something that I can use. And in former Vipassana practices, one of the core hearts of the practice is the Brahma Viharas, the 4 divine abodes. And equanimity is one of those divine abodes, these sort of qualities that you can begin to cultivate through visualization style practices. And in Buddhist, like in equanimity as partner, the other 3 would be compassion, loving kindness, and joy. And so you spend a lot of time thinking about how does the true self, the characteristics of the true self, manifest in those qualities. But in that particular philosophy, there's an interesting additional point, which is the concept of a near enemy. And the near enemy is an emotional state that like really mimics that genuine kind of virtue or characteristic, but it actually undermines it slightly. Like a far enemy would be the opposite. All right, if I love you, I hate you, right? That sort of duality of opposites. But the near enemy of equanimity is actually defined in that practice as apathy or indifference. Because you can mistake equanimity for indifference. And as I think about my own experience around this kind of concept of curation, I think it's even more nuanced than that for me in my lived experience. It's that this, like equanimity, the near enemy of equanimity is actually a desire to flatten out the intensity of motion, like emotion, and to compress the amplitude of it in some kind of way, which I think is another form of aversion in disguise. It has been for me. And there's kind of this other part of equanimity, like there's not only aversion, but there's grasping and attachment. And I also think there's another near enemy of equanimity for me, which is sort of artificially spinning something to be positive or manufacturing some kind of faux gratitude in my life. Because like, oh man, as some sort of spiritually developed being, like we have to be appreciative of all the small things in life, because that's like, we should just be experiencing this long parade of like these quiet, sacred moments in our life, which I mean, candidly, it's not always how I feel. But I think that's a bit of the grasping. And one of the big ways that I find myself in that sort of near enemy of equanimity as well is taking a purely intellectual approach to sort of reframing the situation that I have. Well, I want to live this sort of vital life, and because of that, I need to be in control of my emotions. I need to be this equanimous being out in the world. And part of it is that that purely intellectual kind of reframing of a situation is incredibly neglectful of the sense of what's actually happening in my body. And it's like I'm living this experience from the neck upward, and I'm walking around and navigating the world as kind of floating brain problem-solving life, which I feel like is one of the real stumbling blocks that I'm guilty of at points in my practice. And so I practiced those practices for a long time, and it definitely doesn't produce, I would say, in experience, any kind of equanimity, but really a diminishment of the kind of vitality that I experience, that I want to experience in life, is that kind of North Star to why I practice. And I remember when I was a younger kid, I was lucky enough to have a dad who had a Zen practice and a Tibetan practice over time, and he had a lot of Buddhist books on the shelf. And I remember as a kid, I pulled off Thich Nhat Hanh's book called Being Peace. And inside of that, there's this really like kind of poignant story there that is a story of a man who's grieving the loss of his son, and he's sitting under the tree next to Thich Nhat Hanh, and they're talking, and they're eating an orange together, and they're talking about seeing the whole world in that orange, and even seeing his own son inside of that. And I remember just being this young kid and being like, oh my God, I am so struck by this, the poignancy of that moment. And like, that's how to live a life. And I just remember having this really kind of clear stamp of that story, like real true engagement in it. But I do think over time, you know, the pressures of education or society or economic structure or trauma or whatever, all of that makes its assault on us over time. And I do, you know, have this kind of really classic sense in talking to my friend at that dinner table that, like, I look back and the strategies that I have deployed have flattened that vitality of life over time. And I think, like, that's part of the reason we come into this practice, some of us, is that we run into suffering because the strategies that we bring to it are no longer working for us. They work to a point and then not anymore. And I think at the end of it is like, I have to look at myself and find myself guilty of not receiving the world, not really being willing to take it in. And, you know, as I've been thinking about this idea of vitality, I've spent a long time in contemplation of one line of the Heart Sutra. It's just like really, like, kind of continues to come back for me. And of course, I think we chant this all the time, so many of you know it, but it says form is emptiness. But it also follows, excuse me, with this like really seeming paradox that then emptiness is form, right? And you're presented with this kind of like mind-blowing paradox that's there. But I think that second part of that line is something that like really hits to the heart of this project of vitality in life for me, is that emptiness is not, obviously not nothingness, but, you know, we use this word absolute in certain circles, or the, you know, relative or absolute, but this absolute is expressing itself as everything here. And, you know, to wake up in the morning and say like, well, it's amazing that there's not just nothing, right? We open our eyes and all of the phenomena of the world is here, just as it is. And I think one of the things that I've really loved about this particular tradition is that we have this very specific definition of truth. Like, all of form appears, and even our filters, our notions, our thoughts about that form, if we can perceive that as just thoughts, is all just as it isness. And so we can experience truth very directly, and it's not this heavily philosophical, like, it's not some deep ontological theory or some sort of like really ungrokkable metaphysics, but like, it's direct phenomenology. It's just like, you can believe the sky is blue, the tree is green, a dog is barking right now, right? To use some of the language of our teachers in this tradition. But there's really a step further that I want to draw out, and it's something that Sung San writes about for 3 pages inside of the Compass of Zen. It's the only place he uses this word in the entire book, and I'm going to ask your participation for just a second because I want to make sure you're still with me. But he says, you can see clearly, hear clearly, taste clearly, sense clearly, then everything is... What is it? What's the word? Everything is what? Anybody? Just unmute, write it in a chat. These are common teaching words I think we hear.
Truth.
Jason. Truth. Jason. Truth? Right, so here's what he says, and I've set you up for failure, so I'm sorry about this, but everything is beauty. He actually changes the word truth to beauty for 3 pages in the book. And this blows my mind. This opens up this whole other dimension to this practice for me, is that he touches briefly a realm of aesthetics. And obviously the intersection of Buddhism and aesthetics like deserves its own full-fledged talk, but I'm going to stay a little closer to sort of the lived experience for me. But I find this turn of phrase that everything is beauty is incredibly resonant with sort of the experience that I have in this practice. And so he says, like, I'll just quote Sung San here for a second. I'll just read from the Compass of Zen. He said, everything is beauty just as it is. Perceiving truth That truth is the same point, this moment-to-moment life. We call it the treasure of Buddha. In the treasure of Buddha, beauty means that your mind is not moving and everything is beautiful because everything is truth. And this kind of beauty comes not from outside appearance or the attractiveness of things. And so he goes on in the Compass of Zen, and he tells this story about he was taken to an art exhibit in Paris. And he goes around the whole museum, and the standout piece for everybody there was a pair of old socks that were tacked up to the wall. And so I'll just pick back up with another little clip from Compass. He says, what do these socks mean? What are their inside meaning? Inside meaning of this picture is that a human did a lot of walking in these socks. A person put a lot of energy and effort into them, and with time passing, they became worn and full of holes, and they showed a lot of suffering. And the picture of old socks makes an important point. This picture teaches us something about a human being's life. The socks are just as they are. They are pieces of something ordinary, everyday life that most people ignore. So although the socks are dirty, they convey, the meaning they convey is beautiful. And so he goes on, he writes a little bit more about this over the course of 3 pages, that even if you're standing in front of a beautiful picture or a landscape or something, or other beautiful things that might be in front of you, your view can change in your mind and it can become not so beautiful. Like the birds chirping outside, you can become irritated at it. Even a beautiful landscape can become sad and ugly based on the movement of your own mind. So I think what he's claiming here, and for me, which is important back to this point of vitality, is that beauty is the expression of truth, of the isness of everything in and of itself, and our connection to it, our oneness with it. Since, right, if we can claim here just theoretically, right, there's no subject-object dualism, then every point of truth and beauty in the world only reflects back our own truth and beauty intrinsically. And I think that is such a revelatory statement that is certainly different from the one that I hear in other Judeo-Christian backgrounds that I have been exposed to. And so I actually think that this can change a life. This is changing my life. And it's one of the most important I have as a handhold inside of this sort of journey, is to experience the world as beautiful. And so I hear this echoed in Thich Nhat Hanh's Orange, where he invites us in his teaching again and again to look deeply into each thing that we encounter. He sees that orange as the summation of all of causation and time and interdependence and emptiness, and ultimately change that manifests itself in a slice of an orange that we put in our own mouth. And I think there's this a beautiful line from Dogen also that's always kind of stuck with me quite a bit. He's one of the important patriarchs in the Soto lineage from Japan, and he describes his way to find meaning in sort of every little thing, in every grain of rice and cup of water. And he asks us to pay respect to it as if it was the Buddha himself. And then you can understand that each grain of rice is the absolute. And there's this wonderful book where Suzuki Roshi comments a lot on some of Dogen's writings. And I'll just give you a little bit of Suzuki Roshi on this. He says, when you live completely involved in a dualistic world, you have the absolute world in its truest sense. When you practice without seeking enlightenment or seeking anything, then there is true enlightenment. And I think he's inviting us to the same place Sung San is calling this moment world, which is full involvement in the world moment by moment, just here, just now as it is. And for me, this is a really brilliant, unlock for me in this practice, right? It becomes not focused on theoretical emptiness, which I think a lot of Buddhist circles can get really heady into what this means. But rather the question asks us, how deep can we burrow into the present moment and savor what it expresses for us? Because if all things are empty exactly just as they are, obviously at some level they have no meaning. And Sung San says, once they have no meaning, then we can find great meaning. We can understand great meaning. That we can, by our attention and our engagement with the world, in that present moment, kind of realize meaning in everything. Because there is nothing, it gives us everything. And so there is, in the Tibetan tradition, there is something that really resonates with me as well, is this idea, this sort of realization of beauty takes one more step. And there's a contemporary Tibetan monk, Mingyur Rinpoche, and he writes about this. He says that like the beauty extends to being in love with the world. And I was reading some of his journal entries, and it really brought it home for me. He says this, he says, all of life is a magic display of light and form, a universe of infinite blessings that invite us to turn our hearts inside out and love completely, and to love until the inexhaustible end of dreams. And those are really beautiful and very poetic words, and hopefully they sort of they help touch to the heart of what we're talking about here, which is truth and vitality and beauty. But ultimately it asks something of us. It asks us to open up big enough, to become vulnerable enough, to be willing to receive the amplitude, the full amplitude of life's changing energies, and really, as he puts it, to turn our hearts inside out. And if that isn't a living expression of the Bodhisattva vow, I don't know what is. And there is one other way. I was in retreat at Wagesa in Seoul, in Korea, and I spent some time there. And this one of the Jogye order nuns that was there, kind of in the same lineage of Sung San, she handed me this book, and then the title named it perfectly. It was Empty and Marvelous. And the second part of that is so on point for me. But it's not just sort of our traditions that have this at the core center. When we look at other non-dual traditions, and what we're not alone at sort of pointing to the moon on this thing. When I look at the non-dual practices in Sufism, which stands sort of, I would say, separate and outside of Islam as a whole, there's this concept of ziyan as well. And it's translated to the world as ornament. And it holds that all of physical creation is a dazzling and beautiful manifestation of the divine. And by that, they mean something like what we mean by absolute. And so it's not something to be escaped or transcended, but this sort of really magnificent display that shimmers with meaning. The world is ornament. So truth and beauty dressed as the world itself. And so I think if there's just one other place to do it, is there, there's this kind of common phrase that I hear when I read through Compass or some of our Kongan books. Like Sung San himself would often dismiss people. He's like, go drink tea. Right? And this is sort of this, like, it feels almost like he's like brushing somebody off, like, get out of the room, just get out of my face, move on, next person. But I really think it's an invitation to us to go meet beauty right there. And the warmth of a cup of tea, the taste of it on your tongue, the steam of it rising up in your nose. I mean, I think that moment, the tea and you aren't two things. That beauty that you taste in that cup of tea is not separate from you, but it really is your own original nature shining back at you. I think in that title, both empty and marvelous. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Colin. Let me remove pin. Go ahead and pin me, I guess, for the recording.
I've got you on first screen pin. Is that right?
Okay, I guess. We'll find out. Thank you. You said a lot in there, and I might have something to maybe blow your mind. That Zen Master Sung San has never written a book. Some of you may know that, all of them. Compass of Zen, Dropping Ashes on the Buddha. Only don't know technically he wrote letters to people, or so. For Only Don't Know book, students would write letters, and usually some kind of question, and then he would reply. And there's thousands of these letters. I think there's even a big collection of most of them. And then, some of those letters was turned into a book. And I notice, especially in the Compass of Zen, not most, but there's a lot of it that's not his words. I mean, there's a couple things happening from that book. First of all, the Compass of Zen, all of the material was gathered from Dharma talks. Now, some of these Dharma talks were in English, maybe in America, maybe at Hwagesal at that time. Some of the talks were actually in Korean with a completely different audience. So sometimes he would add a little more Buddhism flavor to the talks. Like if you read that book, you can kind of see some of it's not kind of Zen teaching. It's more kind of maybe a traditional Buddhist approach. So you have that too. So these talks were gathered from all different kinds of sources. But also the person who gathered this and put it together was Hyang Gaksenim, who added his own kind of interpretation of the teachings. So because if you read some of it, he's never talked like that on a lot of this material. But I don't actually think that matters. I remember when I was writing my book, they had to go through a lot of different editing processes, and some like scholars had to read it for some reason. I don't know why. And I got some feedback. Oh, the Buddha never said this, or Bodhidharma never said this. It's like, okay, this never even happened. And this one scholar actually said there may be proof that Bodhidharma didn't even exist. Wait, Bodhidharma exists. All these teachings that we follow, in fact, our lineage comes from Bodhidharma. So it's like, if you take a step back, it's like, is it really that important if it was said or not, if it's true or not? Because really, all of the teachings, and Colin mentioned this too, are like fingers pointing to the moon. So they're pointing to something. So whether the story happened or not is not important. Whether the person existed or not is not important. Because Colin said something interesting, that this has helped change his life, the way he approaches his life, the way he approaches his practice. And really that's the most important, is, again, these words are not to give us a better idea or a better understanding. I always hear this teaching from the Avantamsaka Sutra. Everything comes from mind alone. People feel really settled with that. Like, of course, this is why there's so much suffering in this world. This is why my life has so many difficulties. But that's not our practice. Because our practice is always questioning our understanding, our belief, our idea, our opinions, even if it's a good one. So if we take another step further, well, if everything comes from mind alone, my question would be, then where did mind come from? My son was just talking about this. He's 13. Some of you know him, but he's really into science lately, and watching videos about the origins of the universe. And he was saying, Dad, there's this. People think that everything came from the Big Bang. But where did the Big Bang come from? That's very interesting. And that actually they're looking into this too. If everything came from God, then where did God come from? Right? So this is kind of this is exactly the mind we approach every moment, is not settling on any idea, any belief, any philosophy. This is why we call it the Great Question. When Colin was talking about big kongans, kongans happened organically. We've been reading this for Thursday morning practice in the Compass of Zen about kongans. And just how, like, when the Buddha was when he left his palace and he's exploring, different situations, it really brought up a lot of questions organically in his mind. Like, wow, why is there so much human suffering? What is the point of all of this? What am I doing here? Right? This is a kongan that appears naturally. We all have that inside. And this is why Suzuki Roshi call it a beginner's mind. It's a mind that's always curious and open, not settling on anything. What is this? And this is what can really change our lives. Anyways, does anybody have any questions about Colin's talk? Meditation, Buddhism, practice, life? Could be the online song. Any kind of questions, okay? You can either, I think, unmute, raise your hand, whatever is easier for you. Anything you're struggling with?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hang on.
Hey, Kelly. Good to see you.
How are you?
Good.
I'm in the darkness here, but that's okay.
Oh, no problem. Now you're in the light.
I have a question. So I wrote it down.
Okay.
So with regards to suffering, it seems like why is it so much easier to cling to the bad stuff and get rid of it when we know it's not good for us? It's when there's good, happy thoughts, we're like, you know. But when it comes to the sufferings and the anger or whatever, the lack of closure or whatever the situation is, it's so much harder to move past it, and we just cling to the aversions.
Mm-hmm. So you can kind of, like I was saying, investigate for this. Where's the clinging coming from? I mean, if you just had to take a guess, where do you think clinging is coming from?
Just in the mind.
Okay. So where does the mind come from then?
Just my own imagination.
Okay. Where does imagination come from?
I
And you
don't
said
know.
my imagination. Right. You don't know. So
Yeah.
I don't know either. So this wasn't to put you on the spot in front of 20 people. It's to really look at this sincerely and honestly. It's you could say nature, but conditionally we are programmed or conditioned to avoid pain, of course, right? All animals are like that. Our dog was a rescue dog, so he understands abuse. Because when we first got him, he just put his hand near him, and he would go like this, like this. That's how we are conditioned. Everything is like this. So, if you look at the core of Buddhist teachings, the life is suffering to me. I don't know if it's translated the best way. Life is dissatisfactory. I kind of like this because it is dissatisfying. And because I noticed in my own life, just looking at it, when I didn't get what I wanted, I was dissatisfied. We're all like that. Then if I finally got the thing that I wanted, now I'm satisfied. But guess what? I can't keep it. I write in my book, I lost my job, I got divorced, and I couldn't play music anymore. It was like everything was falling apart. Everything I built up for all of these years and these things that defined me, that I identified with, all fell apart. So now I'm dissatisfied. And maybe more common is we get that thing we really want, but maybe it's not enough, right? We got to feed the the beast. Like we want more and more and more, and it just never ends. Or we want it to be different. It's like, oh, I finally got this relationship, but man, only if they made more money or if they were just a little bit taller or whatever it is, Like it's just never enough. So what is the source of this? So the Buddha made it very clear in his Four Noble Truth. It's because of grasping. And if the way I've understood the teaching, it didn't say that grasping is good or bad. This is with the dualism that Colin's talking about. And maybe some practices and religions will point to this is good and this is bad. He didn't say it's good or bad. He just said, this is what I discovered, that grasping has a natural result, and that natural result is dissatisfaction. And I'm not even sure if he was telling us what we should do. He just said, if you let go, right? So if you grasp, the natural result is dissatisfaction. If you don't touch, the natural result is freedom, clarity, compassion, love. But I'm not even sure if he said you should pick one. He just said, this is what I discovered. You find out for yourself. So then, okay, if everything comes, if this is dissatisfaction comes from grasping, because we see it, like you said clearly, we try to push away the things that are uncomfortable, that we don't like, and we try to hold on to the things that gives us joy, comfort, security. But that is the definition of grasping. Okay, so where does grasping come from? Well, you said mind. Where does mind come from? I mean, you could play this game forever, especially if you're very clever. I remember talking to a scientist one time at the Providence Zen Center. Holy crap. Like if I give an interview, maybe 3 minutes, they'll come up, don't know, right? You were like much shorter. That's very good. But this person kept going on. Oh, it comes from thinking. Where's thinking come from? Mind. Where does mind come from? Consciousness. Where's consciousness come from? It's on and on and on. It's like peeling the layers back of an onion. And eventually he got to this place where he was like, huh, don't know. Don't know is our true self, is our original state, is the absolute. Whatever word you want to give it. It's not the word, it's the experience, as Colin was talking about. The experience of perceiving that. Okay? So we have no idea why, but I would invite all of us to investigate that, because when we return to don't know, then we're free. Like, it doesn't mean we're not going to have avoidance or likes and dislikes or opinions, right? We just know that it's just not it. It's just, as Colin said too, everything is truth. So if that's true, then, it's easy to say, oh, the sky is blue, the tree is green, because that sounds pretty. But what's also the truth? Crying, anger, fear, confusion, clarity, enlightenment. We can go on and on here. We don't have that much time, right? It's the clinging onto those things that creates dissatisfaction. If we don't touch it, they're what they are. Sadness is just what it is. And is that beautiful? I like this actually term. I do like this. Replacing maybe beauty with truth. Would you say that sadness is beauty? Would you say killing is beauty? I mean, it's something to really look at. What are we actually defining here? Right? Because it's very easy to get in this dualistic thinking. We know from our experience that dualistic thinking creates dissatisfaction for ourselves and others. So this is why Zen, we really get to the core. We ask these questions sincerely, and we come up with don't know. From that place, we see that we are not separate from the moment. We can't become one with this moment because we are one with this moment. We are already enlightened. It's already complete. It's just waking up to that. Okay?
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Yes. Was that Roland? Hey, Roland.
Hi, Jason. Your talk next to Colin raised for me the question: does it matter if somebody has written a book or not, or who phrased which word? But my more question is about since I'm now on the brink to, how to say, some kind of marketing. My question goes more in this direction. I think on the one hand, it's easy to catch people, to give some candy to start with practice, or to have some idea why to start.
Yeah.
But what would you say is that which keeps you to practice? Because the candy after some, like chewing gum,
Right.
if you taste it too long, then you want to spit it out, or or
Yes.
like love or relationship. At the beginning, oh honey, yeah, wonderful,
Yeah.
I like to see you. But on the long run, uh, there is something else. So
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I think all of us, maybe most of us, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm talking about my experience and then actually talking to other people over the years, is we all came to practice wanting something, grasping after something, wanting something to be different. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, that's our human condition. And yeah, there's a, Zen has a little less candy than some other traditions too. Because I remember I was practicing for a while. So when I first started practicing Zen, I wanted to get rid of the anger I was experiencing and the fear. I wanted it to go away. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. Because I heard, about enlightenment or being complete and all of these other wonderful terms. And then this teacher told me, if you practice Zen, you don't get anything. I was like, what? Why wake up every morning and do all of this work? And why do we go to these retreats? Why do we do all of these things? That doesn't make any sense. And later I realized too what he was saying, and it's just kind of like what I already said. It's already complete in this moment. We are already enlightened. In fact, I don't even say we are enlightened, but yeah, we are enlightenment. Let's just put it that way. There's no separation. And even Zen Master Sung Song obviously saw this too. Like when he first started teaching at the Providence Zen Center, everybody was talking about getting enlightenment. That's what they really wanted. Many people are striving for this. So he once said at a talk, because he heard this over and over again, he said, let me ask you this. If you get enlightenment, then what? This is my new phrase all the time now. Then what? What now? And no one can answer. And he goes, well, desire brought you here, so that's good. And what that means is like we really have to investigate deeply. So like I said, I came to the practice really wanting something, and that's fine. And I was disappointed when, first it was a big relief, like I was practicing with people and just kind of like breathing and doing meditation every day kind of helped me be more calm. But it never took away my problems, and it never took away my experiences of fear, anger, joy, all of it. So it's like, well, then how do you get people to practice? Someone asked Colin, we can get all my practices for all beings. But, I'd have to say over time, practices really helped me be with all of the things that are appearing. So being with the things that are difficult, really that's what we're talking about, because usually we want to get rid of it. It's like Zen Master Sung Song's teaching of the backseat driver. I really love his analogy. I kind of changed it a little bit, but it's like there's always that voice talking, telling us what to do, and we're controlled by it. And at some point in our lives, we realize that it's not helping us. So we think, oh, maybe I'll do some meditation practice, and the backseat driver will shut up, right? So you're driving, the backseat driver says, turn right, and you're like, shut up. And that just gets louder and stronger, right? That's trying to like stop your thinking or stop your feelings. It's not correct. But we learn from our own experience, because that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to stop it. And then it got stronger. I was like, wow, this is not really working. So what is the other option? The other option is backseat driver says, turn right, and you say, thank you. And you turn left. And what that means is we're putting our attention, our energy, our focus to this moment. What is happening now? And how do I respond to what's happening? Not responding to this backseat driver. This little voice that's always talking, telling us what to do, its job is to do that. That's its job. Our job is to put our attention to now. What is happening right now? Oh, I'm sitting here in this office answering questions. It's that simple. So I think, it's important to give a little candy, otherwise no one would come practice. Right? What? If you practice then you don't get anything? No thanks. It's like, yeah, it will. And it does, it does change some of your habits. It does change some of your karma. And it's not the practice that's doing it, you're doing it. Right? We say that the practice is doing it, but we're doing it because we're starting to see, we're starting to put our attention to what's happening and not so much on our thinking. And to me, it's like, it's a necessity. If people ask me, why do you practice? And I'll ask them, not in a smart ass way. It's like, why do you sleep? And why do you eat? I mean, to me, it's that essential. When I did my 90-day solar retreat, that really stood out. What is really important? Before I started that solar retreat, I thought there's all these things I need. But what I found out by being by myself and having some really bad food for 90 days is what I needed was sleep, shelter, food, and practice. It's weird. It's like the practice is essential because I know if I'm not doing it, right, I start to go back into listening to this backseat driver, getting pulled around by it again. And it's strange. Like I'll go on vacation. This happens a lot. I'll go travel or if I'm sick. And then I come back or I start feeling better. It takes me a while to get the practice going. Usually I just forget because the habit's gone. So I usually try to practice in the morning. And then it's like, I'm going, man, I'm getting enough sleep. I'm eating well. What's going on? Something just feels off. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't been practicing. And you could say, oh, we should be practicing every moment. Yeah, that's true. But because we are habitual creatures, we have strong karma, we need something to remind us to practice. So, setting up a daily practice schedule, going to Dharma talks, going to retreats, connecting with teachers, practicing with Sangha. All of this helps to remind us that, oh, right now, I can practice meditation. What is meditation? What's happening now and how can I help? So yeah, I think Zen Master Sung Song said he always would give candy, but really important is to take the candy away eventually. Some people don't like that, so they'll go somewhere else. Some people really see, it's not about trying to get rid of things and try to keep things. It's really digesting our human experience because that is what gives us wisdom and strength. Any other question? I think we have 6 minutes left or so. Thank you for being here, by the way, for this first talk. I hope it's something that people are interested in having more regularly. We do have a lot of wonderful online teachers who can answer questions and want to participate in this kind of thing. Oh, good. I'm glad, Kelly. If there's no more questions, then maybe I can just kind of finish this off by saying, everything that has happened in our lives led to this moment. I find that pretty amazing. Hearing Colin's talk, I was thinking about a lot of the struggles I had when I was growing up, but mostly when I moved to Seattle in my 20s. It's like, this is where life happened and then completely fell apart. The interesting thing, and I've been talking to my son about this a lot too, because he's fascinated by all of this. I think it was last year sometime, and I was talking to him. I said, this is crazy, because he knows about my past. I haven't told him about my really bad past, but a lot of the kind of big events in my life, moving to a different state, starting a new life, getting married before, trying to find doing something you love, trying to get paid for doing something you love, all of that stuff he's very interested in. And, I said, all of that stuff fell apart, and it was it was probably one of the most difficult times in my life, besides that solo retreat. But but all of those things that happen led to this very moment. He's like, what? It's like, yeah, if those things didn't happen, you wouldn't be here. It's so insane. It's like the farmer and the horse story. I'm sure most people know this. I love the story because and in fact, this is a story you can share with anybody, even if they don't practice anything, right? Because because really what we're talking about, Buddhism, Zen, is just about our human condition and why we are dissatisfied. That's it. There's nothing else happening there. There's a lot of different ways of talking about it and expressing it. But that story is interesting because it starts off with the farmer with a very prized, wonderful, expensive horse, and his neighbors always admired him and thought he was so lucky and so fortunate. And then he would say, yeah, we'll see. And then, of course, the horse runs away. Now, what would we call this? This is a bad situation, right? So the neighbor is saying, this is so unfortunate. You have such bad luck. That's why the farmer said, oh, I guess we'll see. And then, of course, the horse comes back. Not only does he come back, he comes back with the wild horse. Now everything's good. And the neighbor's like, you're so lucky, so fortunate. This is amazing. Farmer said, yeah, we'll see. And the son tries to tame this wild horse, gets bucked off, breaks his leg very bad. Now it's a bad situation. The farmer said, oh, this is very bad. Your son's injured and we're very sorry. Such bad luck. We'll see. And of course, the army comes and are drafting young men for the war. They see the son. We can't use him. He's no good to us. He's a broken leg. Now it's a good situation. The farmer's like, this is wonderful. Now you won't go to war and get killed. Like this labeling these things good and bad, we never get to digest it. And it's a fact it's an avoidance. And if we can't digest it, we remain confused, and wisdom is never developed because of this. But it's really like this, we make this effort to really perceive things how they are. We try not to push away. We try not to hold and just be with it. That's very difficult. This is why we call it great courage in Zen. It takes a lot of courage to really see the truth. And even after practicing Zen, or at least in this school for 29 years, it's still difficult to see the truth of what we are creating in our mind. It's hard to see, but it's very important to see, because if we can have the courage to be with it, then we can digest it. I like this word. I got it from Zen Master Sung Song, right? Because it's like you eat food, goes in your belly, it digests, the energy gets into your body, and then you can use this energy to do things. But it's the same way with our experiences. It's very easy to digest the wonderful experiences or the happy experiences, but more challenging to digest these difficult ones. And digesting, again, means just being with it, having the courage to show up. If we don't have the courage, practice with the Sangha. You notice it when you're practicing together with people, that you're getting the support and energy to be with it. A lot of retreats, people are crying and all kinds of things are happening, and it's okay. It's a safe place to digest this. My teacher used to say that the monastery at the Providence Zen Center is like mother's arms, just holding you so you can just be. And when we can really digest these experiences, it gives us strength, it gives us wisdom, so we can continue on. With what? How to be a human being and how to respond to this world with love and compassion. So thank you, everyone, so much for being here. Colin, again, thank you for your wonderful talk. I really appreciate you and sharing that experience with us, because it is helpful. And yes, I hope this was helpful. And if you are interested, let us all know. Send emails to Tam. You can send emails to me. We want to at least get this, do these every month. And if it goes well, maybe we can start doing these twice a month too, because there's a lot of teachers and a lot of actually a lot of practitioners here who have a lot to share. Like I said, if you have a life, you have a Dharma talk, so we'd love to for you to be part of that. So thank you, everyone.